Good morning. This is the video for Friday, March the 27th, and you can see that the volume was a little bit higher than the relative volume, but nonetheless lower than we've seen through the big sell-off. So that buying volume is less than the selling volume, which we pointed out in the video Thursday. And the market dropped off at the end of the day. I think it's for the simple matter that no one knew what was going to happen over the weekend with the coronavirus. So there was a lot of people making sure that they weren't holding fresh positions that made money this week, because actually the market overall was up this week, wasn't it? So people made money. They decided they would take those profits and just be on the safe side and wait for Monday and see what happens. So at 6 o'clock tonight, when the futures start to trade, take a look what happens. Now the stock market breadth, the McClellan Oscillator, had to drop because it was too high. We said that it could remain above here for a long time, but not without some vacillation, some up and down. Now if it comes back up, we're going to find out if it's bearish or bullish. If the bulls are bears are exerting pressure, any rebound is going to be less than this point right here. So let's take a look at some other McClellan oscillators. Pull up that chart here. This is, let me pull this over here. This is 2018. So at the end of 2018, you saw how the Dow Jones market took this big drop. It went from its high of 26,600 down to 21,800 roughly. So about 600 points lower. And what did we see with the McClellan Index at that time? We saw it shoot up in its correction, but then spend another day up there, then come down, shoot up, down. The series of where we saw bearish indicators where the oscillator was not able to exceed what it was the day before, so it had lower highs, and it continued to have lower highs as the market started to stall right in here. So now let's look at the summation index roughly over that same period of time, and you can see that the summation index August of 2017. So where is our drop? It's right here. Here's the drop in the Dow, and you can see the summation index did some bouncing but came to make its low right here. This was February of 2018. Our summation index isn't changing that much. If you look at the raw numbers on the summation index, because we've had McClellan oscillators, and here's our McClellan oscillator numbers right here, because we've had 3 days now of McClellan oscillator numbers that were positive, and we hadn't seen those going back to, what month was that? Was that August? Sorry. February this month, I'm sorry. But the summation index is changing from -28 to -27 to -25 to -24. So it's not changing very quickly. Let's look at the charts and see the reason why I think we are not, which we talked about on Thursday, we're not going to have a V bottom. We're going to have a W bottom, because I believe that the market wants to retest the strength of this low, whether it's 2358 or if it actually gets down to here into the 2200s. We have this gap to fill. That's why I think there's going to be a W bottom, where we're going to come down and retest this bottom and see if we've really found a bottom. The only way to say you've really found a bottom is if it's been tested, and it hasn't been tested. Apple is another one that has a gap, and a green line, which we draw in to show support areas. So just like the S&P, where our gap is just below a green line support area, we have Apple with a gap just above the green line support area. So it's quite plausible that it comes down to fill this gap and bounces off this previous area of support. If we look at Caterpillar, it doesn't have any gaps, except a gap higher, but it could as well suffer the effects of the double bottom. Coca-Cola, no gaps, bounced off of our green support line, which we see more easily on the weekly charts. Home Depot, which has been a great stock for us to buy this week, on a weekly basis ended up much higher than the week before. We were off of our highs overall, but that's not the end of the world. I mean, that's not a bad sign. Home Depot is still strong, but it also has a gap that could very well be filled, and the 38.2% was also this green line of area support. So there's another big stock that's telling us that we have a possibility for a dead cat bounce and a retest of everybody's lows. Whirlpool continues to be a very unattractive stock. Not going to look at any others. Let's just call it that. I honestly believe, let's look at the volatility index before we go. Volatility index on a daily basis stayed moved up from the day before, but on a weekly basis, the volatility ended up slightly lower than the close the week before, but overall for the whole week, the volatility spent most of its time higher than the week before. Volatility still has a little bit of a ways to go if you look at stochastic momentum indicators. And I do believe that all of this shows, because of the gaps and because of the just uncertainty in the market, that we are going to go back and retest this area of 2340, anywhere below 2400 down to as low as I would say 2200. 22 to 2400 would be an area that we could say is going to be the area that we, right in here. That's going to be the area where we're going to rediscover if we have a real low or not. So good trading next week. Watch the futures at 6 o'clock.